Morning, everyone. We are on the record in case number 2025-00010, electronic alleged failure of Navitas KY NG LLC to comply with certain Kentucky statutes and its gas cost recovery tariff. My name is Angie Hatton. I'm chair of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. Joining me today are Commissioner Mary Pat Regan and Commissioner Andrew Wood. The hearing today is for the purpose of taking evidence in this matter. At this time, we'll have entry of appearance of counsel. For the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Evan Buckley with Dinsmore and Scholl on behalf of Navitas.
Okay, nice to have you. And you have just one witness today?
That's correct.
Okay. And for commission staff?
Jason Collier for commission staff.
Good morning. And you're joined by?
From the financial division, Sarah Jankowski and Sangeetha Mahadavaswamy.
Okay. And I've been advised that public notice has been given and filed into the record. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Any outstanding motions?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I've been advised that there is no one waiting to give public comment remotely. I don't see anyone, but I'll go ahead and ask if there's anyone here today who wishes to give public comment. I will remind everyone that public comment may still be given by providing the instructions located on the PSC's website at psc.ky.gov, and written comments may always be submitted by sending an email to psc.comment@ky.gov. And let the record show that the instructions and link to provide public comments have been posted on the website for the past day. All right, anything further before we begin presentation of evidence? No? All right, please call your first witness.
And I guess, Madam Chair, if I may just briefly inquire, we're here not as an applicant today.
I called you applicant.
Yes, ma'am. And it's not our typical case, I suppose, but I guess I just want to confirm that commission staff has no witnesses that it intends to call to describe, the investigation it undertook in connection with this matter or elucidate the allegations or facts underpinning them.
Counsel?
No witnesses for us.
I think it would have been pretty unfair not to tell you before now. So.
Well, I think so, and I think, I guess that goes to a little bit of, well, we'll get into it, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Right.
For our witness, we have Mr. Thomas Hartline, President of Navitas KY NG LLC.
Mr. Hartline, would you come on over here to the witness stand and raise your right hand? Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay, please be seated. Tell us your full name and your business address.
Thomas Eben Hartline, 3186D Airway Avenue, Costa Mesa, California, 92626.
Okay, and counsel, you may ask.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hartline, good morning. Can you please state your title for the record?
I'm the president of Navitas Utility and the secretary of Navitas KY NG.
And approximately how long have you held those positions?
Since 2006 for Navitas Utility and 2011 for Navitas KY NG.
Did you cause to be filed or sponsor data request responses in the course of this proceeding?
I did.
And do you have any changes or amendments to those responses as you sit here today?
No, sir.
I'll tender the witness.
Okay. Now, direct is permitted if you wanted to do any, because I don't think guest testimony was filed in this case. But.
Well, I guess that was going to be one of my questions for a little leeway on redirect. I certainly would like to ask him some questions.
Beyond the scope of cross?
I'm sorry?
Beyond the scope of cross?
Well, I would say perhaps a bit. I mean, I think that I can certainly kind of proceed with more direct and then allow cross, or I was kind of deferring to what the tribunal would prefer.
Normally we won't let you do any direct, but
Right.
I will let you do whichever way you'd like. If you'd like to have cross first and then a more expansive redirect, that's okay with me. If you want to lead into some direct, that's okay as well. So I'll let that be your choice.
I think I'll just tender him and allow staff and the commissioner to kind of ask questions as they see fit, of course, and then I appreciate the opportunity to be a bit more expansive on redirect to flesh out the issues if necessary.
With that, we'll turn it over to counsel for staff.
Thank you, Chair, and Mr. Buckley. I would not expect to have any objection to questions beyond the scope of cross. Just, as you said, sort of the unique properties of this case kind of feel like require that or permit that. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Hartline. Thank you for being here. First, I'd like to ask just some general questions about how your company prepares your gas cost adjustment filings. Who with your company is preparing the actual spreadsheets and forms that you file with the PSC?
The process starts with our regulatory analyst, Julie Loving, and she does the, gathers all the spreadsheet, the invoices from the various suppliers and providers. She puts those into our accounting system, and she initially populates the spreadsheet, and then eventually it comes to me, and I do a good portion of the work on the spreadsheet.
Is there any sort of automated system, might be a little more complex than what I actually mean, but is there any sort of automated system or anything that's automatically populated from what you described as the accounting system that Ms. Loving is putting information into to what you're filing?
No, there's no, it's not a database. We use QuickBooks for accounting, but the actual GCA is, in 2012, we developed an Excel spreadsheet to use that kept all the data and kept track of it, and we presented that here in 2012. And then, but there's no, it doesn't pull data in from QuickBooks. You have to enter it by hand.
So when you enter the GCA information to the spreadsheet, you're doing it by hand and you're pulling from, I assume, multiple sources, the QuickBooks, potentially other spreadsheets, any other documents or sources that you're pulling from for that spreadsheet?
Sure. So we have a billing system, which is, I believe it's called Continental, and that produces what's called a bill edit list, which is the summary document at each month when we bill. So you have to get information from that document, and then you get all the invoices from the various suppliers, which includes not just the price but also the quantity. And then those are probably, between the invoices and the bill edit list, that's probably the vast majority of the information right there.
Do you want? Mr. Hartline, I'm going to talk about individual entries in a GCR filing. If you want to find one if you have a binder to look through. If not, I can put one up on the screen. Can you tell me what line items on your GCR filing are hard-coded with a specific number that you never change, and what individual entries you are entering when you're entering them by hand?
Sure. So in the spreadsheet that we initially developed in back in 2012, which what we did is we took your paper spreadsheets that you had on your website that were a Word document, and we essentially developed an Excel spreadsheet around those paper spreadsheets. When you look at the Excel spreadsheet, the cells are color-coded, and those colors mean things. So if the cell is a green cell, that means that you put a number in there, that you need to put a number in. If the cell is blue, that means it's a calculation, and will automatically calculate once you put the green information in. If the cell is pink, then what that means is it's pulling data from one of the other worksheets in the spreadsheet into that spreadsheet. That's typically how I color code and the way you're able to look at the data.
Trying to bring one up so we can put it on the screen. All right, Mr. Hartline, that document on the screen, am I looking? Is this the page that you're referring to with the blue and?
Right. It looks more tan than pink, but
Sure.
it's supposed to be pink.
All right, so expected gas cost, the first line item, gets pulled from J12, which is calculated using these two. Okay. Tell me what on this spreadsheet, if anything, is hard-coded.
Well, the numbers are generally being pulled from the subsequent pages. So there you go. I don't know that any of the numbers on that page would be hard-coded or are even meant to be hard-coded. Here you can see the same color scheme generally is being followed.
And so under Clinton County, there's a calculated rate for petrol at Sparta, but a hard-coded number for Enbridge. Why is there a difference?
So Enbridge has a tariff that doesn't change. It's a transportation tariff. The numbers that do change, we're looking, that's a index with an adder that I was using to estimate the future cost of gas.
And we'll get a little deeper into this later on. At this point, I just kind of want to understand who's doing what and sort of how this information gets generated. When did you start being the person that entered information into the spreadsheet and filed it?
I developed this spreadsheet back in 2012, and I have always been involved in this. We've, in 2016, maybe even earlier than that, we started to hire as our operations expanded, we started to hire a regulatory analyst or a regulatory associate, and we've had 3 people in that position. And that person assisted me, began to assist me with this at that time frame.
Whose responsibility at Navitas is it to file anything that's required to be filed by an order or a regulation, such as surcharge reports required by an order, or annual reports required by regulation?
So the regulatory associate, or the regulatory analyst, just for clarification, the difference between an analyst and an associate is someone who has a law degree versus someone who doesn't. So currently it's a regulatory analyst. We had several people who had law degrees prior to that, but in any case, that person is responsible for all of our annual reports, as well as some jurisdictions have quarterly reports that are required, that are not GCA reports, or GCA related. And that person is responsible for filing those. Then, for like, filing the tariff after the GCA is approved, and I'm not sure we have to do that here, but in certain jurisdictions, after we go through this quarterly process, we have to then file a tariff. That person does that. For other filings that might be ordered, we rely on in-state counsel that are barred in the state to do those filings.
You mentioned a regulatory analyst preparing annual reports. Would that be Ms. Loving, or is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the specific allegations set forth in the opening order to this case. So the first one I want to talk about is what certain items that were included as gas cost expenses. So first we'll talk about Kinetrex and the liquid natural gas that you purchased from them. You familiar with that allegation? Have you read the opening order to this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So according to data request responses in this case, the liquid natural gas that you obtained from Kinetrex was for, quote, the third-party pipeline providing transmission of natural gas to the Navitas City Gate for Albany, Kentucky, could not provide the volume of natural gas at sufficient pressure to the system. Is that?
Yes, sir.
Did I correctly read your response? All right, so let's start with third-party pipeline. Who's the third party there?
B&W.
And why is there a third-party pipeline involved?
I don't want to sound flippant, but every subsystem we have has a third-party pipeline involved to transport gas from the producer to our city gate. We take custody at our, at the city gate, and then it goes into our system, and then that's our pipe. But obviously, there's a pipeline that we don't own that every system, there's always a third party involved.
I don't think you're being flippant. Sometimes we have to ask questions that,
Okay.
that we know that we are pretty sure we know the answer to, but 999 out of 1,000 people would not. So
Okay, all right, I understand, okay.
I understand that downstream of Navitas, there are a lot of other folks involved, including in the distribution system. So you have a contract with how many folks like B&W?
I mean, nationwide, we have
Well, let's just say
50
Kentucky.
50 take points. I
Sure.
mean, it's a lot.
I'm not looking for an exact number. I'm just trying to
Right.
give us all an idea of how many folks are involved in this whole process.
Yeah.
Do you know why B&W was not able to provide the volume of gas at the needed pressure?
Yes, sir.
And what was the reason?
So the issue with their pipeline is that it starts at Deer Lodge, Tennessee, and it runs to Static, and then from Static it goes to Albany. The pipeline, at the initial 3 miles of pipe out of Deer Lodge, Tennessee, is a poly pipe, and then it changes to steel until it gets to Static. That poly pipe at the beginning of the 50-mile run has an MAOP of 60 pounds, whereas the steel pipe, I mean, you could probably run it at 300 pounds, but because they're limited by that front end pressure, we can't get any more pressure than that at the outset. And then, of course, the pipeline loses pressure as you travel. You lose pipeline pressure as it travels the 50 miles to our city gate.
And how does your contract with B&W handle situations where they're not able to provide sufficient pressure?
So we don't actually have a contract with B&W. B&W has a tariff, so we just pay the tariff.
And for customers that are serviced by the B&W pipeline, are they basically your only option for supplying gas to those customers?
Yes, sir.
Is there any sort of infrastructure investment that Navitas could make to correct the pressure problem?
We've talked about trying to connect to the Apache pipeline, which is in Burkesville. It's about 12 miles from the Tyson chicken processing facility back to the Burkesville pipeline. And we've looked at that extensively. And I mean, we've even had preliminary engineering done. It's a pipeline that a lot of people throughout the area want. The city of Monticello, the county of Wayne wants it. So there's I believe the legislature even approved some funding for it, but I'm not 100% on that.
In the course of the engineering evaluation, did you receive any sort of figure about the cost involved to hook up to the Apache pipeline?
So, Navitas, one of the things we've been able to do as a small utility coming in is we've been able to do what others haven't. So, for instance, the Tyson chicken plant that I just mentioned, that plant was built in 1985. They assumed that someone would build a pipeline to it. It wasn't until we came in and looked at it and then built a pipeline to them in 2015 in which I think the pipeline was $1.6 million, and we invested $900,000 of our own money to build that pipeline. We've done the same in other jurisdictions, and what we've found is when we build a pipeline, it's literally half the cost of numbers. And so I've seen a quote for this pipeline from, it's admittedly all the way from prior to Burkesville to Monticello, $44 million. And I gotta tell you, that is a ridiculous number. It would not cost $44 million to do that, in my opinion and in my experience.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. Beyond hooking up to the Apache pipeline, is there anything that Navitas or B&W could do to fix or mitigate the pressure issue?
So we just completed a pipeline in conjunction with a local producer and a local contractor. Navitas participated in building a pipeline to a group of local wells that are situated up behind the chicken plant. That pipeline was 5 miles long. It's a gathering line, and we are now be able to bring gas down from those wells, so that'll improve the chicken plant's situation. In addition, of course, at the LNG, but the LNG is not really, it's a really expensive option. I mean, it's $100,000 to bring in a load of LNG for the season.
When you're required to use LNG because of B&W's pressure issue, do you have any recourse against B&W? I mean, do they give you any sort of credit, or do you seek any sort of credit to compensate for the fact that they were unable to provide necessary pressure?
I don't think there's anything in their tariff that says that they have to provide gas at a particular pressure. So I don't think there would be any recourse.
How do you know when you're going to need LNG?
So in the winter is when you're going to need it, because that's when our demand is the greatest. And when we first installed the pipeline to the chicken plant, and it's not the technical name for it, but we installed what we call a reverse regulator. And what this does is, if the chicken plant doesn't see a certain pressure, they do not receive gas, so that the town of Albany will have enough pressure to operate. In particular, what we're looking at is the schools, because that's the big issue, is making sure that the schools have enough gas. And this typically is going to be in December, January, February timeframe. And then one of the things we were having Rusmar do is look at that pressure regulator and take a reading off, reverse pressure regulator, and take a reading off of it every day, so that we could essentially figure out what could we adjust it to. And initially we started at like 27 pounds, and okay, it's working, so we went to 26, and we just kept doing that. When we found that we went all the way to 19, but that created a problem, so we've put it back at like 21 to 23 pounds in order to make sure that the school stays on gas.
The work that you just described, was that initiated because the school or whatever other customer let you know that they were not receiving gas, or is there some other way that you knew?
They had to cancel school for several days. They let us know. They were not happy.
So B&W doesn't let you know that they don't have enough pressure, no sensor system that lets you know that pressure's low?
Well, we run B&W as high as possible in the winter. You know, we turn it up to 60 pounds, and they do have some supplemental wells along the way that help try to maintain that 60 pounds. But now more recently, you know, technology advances. So this was some years ago that we had Rusmar, and for $1,000 a month doing this monitoring. More recently, you just go to Walmart and you get a camera that you hook up to the internet, and now our operations manager in Oklahoma can just view it remotely, which is, you know, it's amazing what technology does for you.
Technology's great when it works.
Yes.
Let me ask you about Kinetrex, your LNG provider. Are they the only option for LNG in that area of the world?
Likely for LNG, we could try to use CNG, and there's probably additional providers that we could use for that.
Let me interrupt you for a second. That's a new abbreviation for me and probably for some other folks in this room. So let me know what that is.
LNG is liquefied natural gas. That comes out of Indianapolis, Indiana. CNG is compressed natural gas. I haven't looked into where the providers are for compressed natural gas. I can tell you that we do use some supplemental compressed natural gas in our operations in Oklahoma, but in those instances, we have several smaller trailers that we own that we can use for that. But it's so for instance, if we're going to be doing a repair, we might just bring out a CNG trailer and try to maintain the system that way. We've also used it, we've had several outages where we've had to bring in outside CNG to maintain systems in other jurisdictions.
What's the benefit to CNG over LNG?
The cost is realistically the same when you're bringing in an outside party with a full load of CNG or LNG. It's going to be about $100,000 a month for that. The LNG is going to have a lot more energy per delivery than the CNG, because LNG, the density of energy is much higher.
But overall, the deciding factor as far as cost is going to be based on how far it's being transported, right?
There's kind of an initial buy-in where just to rent the first load, the trailers that these come in are very specialized trailers with lots of specialized equipment, and so it's just quite expensive for that first load.
I feel like that's a good lead in to asking about the reservation fees in your invoices from Kinetrex. Tell me why from December 2021 to September 2024 invoices that we have all show a $3,700 a month reservation fee to Kinetrex.
Right. So when we looked at doing the deal with Kinetrix.
Sorry, I guess I'm pronouncing it wrong.
I don't know how they pronounce it either, so either way. What we did is we said, look, instead of having, if you take 3,700 times 12, I think it's like $48,000. They basically wanted it to be $48,000, for the initial fee. If our trailer shows up, it's $48,000. And we said that's problematic for us, that we can't afford that. And so we asked them, can you spread that fee over the whole year?
What would that fee have been for? What would they call that? Is it like a security deposit or?
It's essentially what you're doing is you're paying for the delivery. You're paying for the trailer.
And they wanted it all up front for a year.
It's the contract was, I believe we were supposed to get gas from December 15th to March 15th. So it was really only 3 months.
At $3,700 a month, though, that would be
At $48,000 for plus the cost of the gas that they were delivering as well. As I said, it is quite expensive to get either CNG or LNG.
When they asked for $48,000, specifically, what did they call that? That's what I'm asking.
I'd have to look at the contract. They might have called it a reservation fee. I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
Sorry, go ahead, Council.
So Kinetrix wanted $48,000 a year regardless of the fact that, excuse me, that you were really probably only ever going to need LNG during those 3 winter months.
That's correct.
Now, do you also, and this may have changed with the development of new PHMSA rules, but did you also use LNG for instances where you needed to do pressure testing or any other kind of testing, pipeline testing?
When we do not use gas when pressure testing. And we haven't used LNG or CNG trailers for pressure testing.
So you provided us with the invoice that showed when you actually used LNG in Albany, Kentucky. Were there other times since December of 2021 that you used LNG from Kinetrix that we don't have invoices for?
I don't believe so.
So during that period of time, you said the one time that you used LNG from Kinetrix?
I believe it was the entirety of all the Kinetrix billing, which I think totals up to just under $100,000. There were 2 different loads brought in 2 different years. I believe that's correct.
And did you use LNG from any other source during that time?
Not here in Kentucky.
Have you priced other LNG suppliers?
Yes, so we serve the WinStar Casino in Oklahoma, and the WinStar Casino it's actually the largest casino in the world, and it several times the Kinder Morgan pipeline, which is the third-party pipeline that serves that facility into our city gate, they had to do repairs, and so 2 years in a row in August, we had to bring in one year, the first year we brought in LNG, and then the second year we brought in CNG. And both times it was $100,000 for the month.
And did you have to pay a reservation fee for that as well?
It was in that $100,000 that was charged.
And I would assume this might vary from supplier to supplier, but if you had one supplier that was supplying multiple states with LNG, would you expect to have to pay separate reservation fees? For example, if Kinetrex was supplying to your Kentucky operations and also your Oklahoma operations, would you expect to have to pay two different reservation fees or just one?
Oh, you'd have to pay for each trailer. I know that these trailers are over $1 million a piece because we had to get a special insurance policy for the trailer, and it's a very expensive piece of equipment.
And I'm afraid I'm not certain if we've obtained a copy of your contract with Kinetrex, but if not, would you be able to provide a copy of that?
Yes, sir.
Do you know whether your contract spells out what happens if Kinetrex is unable to meet its obligations to bring you LNG?
Well, Kinetrex is owned by Kinder Morgan, and Kinder Morgan has a way of doing one-sided contracts, and so I'm sure it tells us that it's not their fault.
Are you still making monthly payments of $3,700 in reservation fees to Kinetrex?
No, sir.
And why is that?
We stopped using the LNG. Part of we've not, I don't want to, I feel like I asked the commission, can we do this? Now, I asked post, not prior to, but I asked the commission, can we do this? And the only answer I've received is this show cause. I've never been told if we're allowed to use LNG or CNG and include it in our GCA. And I've asked the question.
Let's back up for a second. You say you asked the commission, and I don't necessarily expect you to be able to recite individual cases or documents, but assuming you're not able to do that, would you be able to provide for us in a post-hearing data request what cases and what filings you're referring to when you say you've asked the PSC about using LNG?
Well, I mean, I actually think when I put it on the GCA and you review it, in a way, I'm asking, right? Aren't I? I mean, and if you, and you've seen it for, not you personally, obviously, but you've seen it for a good amount of time, and we've had a lot of data requests that go back and forth, and again, we still don't have an answer. Can I use CNG and LNG in my operations and include it in the GCA or not? Because if I can't, and right now I'm having to operate under the assumption that I can't because I have a show cause against me, I just have to tell the school, I'm sorry, you're going to have to cancel because I cannot take the risk. I can't. I don't make any money as it is, and now you're asking me to put another $100,000 up and probably not recover it, based on what I'm seeing. So I don't, anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're welcome to explain as much as you like. Glenn or Jim, am I able? Thank you. So let's see. The spreadsheet that we were looking at earlier, which is back up on the screen now, which is from case 2024-00401, is there, and you can ask me to switch to whichever tab might show this, is there somewhere in this spreadsheet on any tab that designates payment for LNG?
If you go to the actual adjustment, and see there's Connectrix there, you need to scroll to the right so we can see what it says. Yeah, so you can see we didn't renew the contract, which is why the 3,700 stopped. And then you can see the $100,000, or I'm sorry, the $1,000, not the 100,000. You see the $1,000 that's crossed through, and then the notes I put here that the commission objects to the Rusmar monitoring of the LNG, so we've removed it and not included it.
But as far as the Kinetrex, I'm going to pronounce that 5 different ways apparently. Kinetrex line item, before we started asking questions about Kinetrex and asking for invoices, how would we have known that was for LNG?
Well, I would have assumed we would have given you the contract, because we turn the invoices in every quarter, so there would have been invoices that we turned in.
That only started at, what year did that start?
2020?
2020 for invoices?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you know when you started providing invoices to the PSC?
I couldn't, I don't know.
Do you know if you ever mentioned in a cover letter or any other document that there was some question about whether LNG was supposed to be used or supposed to be recovered in GCA cases?
I think in the, we've covered this in the data request, certainly in this filing.
And I don't expect you to be able to recite case numbers and documents, so when we're reviewing the record again, if we don't find it, then we can just ask in a post-hearing data request when to give you more time to find exactly what we're all looking for.
I guess to expand a little bit, prior to this show cause being filed, our GCA was suspended beginning back in the fall of 2023. And obviously, once you suspended our GCA, we started making inquiries as to, what is the issue here? And to a certain amount, there was a lot of guessing on our part because, again, we do not seem to have any kind of communication with staff. We don't know who to call. We don't know what number to call. It's like, I feel like this whole thing could be avoided if we could just talk to somebody.
Have you tried calling the PSC number?
We've actually asked for informal conferences quite a number of times and been rebuffed every time.
Do you know when those would have been?
We can provide that.
Okay, so you said that you're not paying reservation fees anymore. You don't have a contract with Kinetrex anymore. If the schools in Albany, Kentucky were to lose pressure again, what would you do?
There's nothing to do. I mean, if I can't take the risk, and frankly, I don't have the money. So I don't, we are almost bankrupt. We are so close to being bankrupt. Effectively, in Kentucky, we are bankrupt. You know, we have $400,000, in our view, of uncollected gas costs that from these suspended GCAs. And then we had our rate case denied. So we're charging rates that were established in 1992 in Clinton County and in 2015 in Johnson and Floyd counties. And then you file the show cause against us and you allege fraud. I can't even borrow money now because I can't borrow money when I have an allegation of fraud against me. So if you were trying to bankrupt me, this is exactly what you would do. I don't understand. So I have suppliers that I cannot pay, and they're going to cut my gas off in October. But
I know you're planning on filing a new rate case. Do you have a plan for when you're going to file that?
can we take a break?
Sure.
It's fine by me.
Sure, 10 minutes?
Thank you.
Is that good?
Appreciate that.
We are back on the record in case number 2025-0010. Council, please continue.
Okay. Mr. Hartline, before we took a break, you mentioned that your GCR was suspended, but those rates have been put into effect, correct?
The rate that, well, beginning in the fall of '23, the GCR was suspended, and I believe we had to go 5 quarters with the rate that was in place at the time, and I think we were collecting $4 an MCF. At the 6th quarter, I believe it was still suspended, but only for 1 day. So I believe the 5 quarters were just suspended, and we couldn't implement a new rate. And then the last 2 quarters, you've still not approved it, but you've allowed us to put the revised rates in place, subject to refund.
Okay, so for a period of, I'm sorry, how many, did you say 5
I
months?
believe it was 5 quarters.
Oh, 5 quarters. So for a period of 5 quarters, you undercollected?
Yes, sir.
Do you know by how much? I mean, it's in the record, obviously, but just for the benefit of the commission.
We have about we believe we're undercollected $400,000 to our customers.
And we'll talk more about this later, but
Incidentally, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Incidentally, you can see the number on the spreadsheet.
I'm trying to pop it back up here. All right.
So if you go to the balance adjustment tab and see the number at the top, the very, very top line, this is a running total of how much over or under collected we are to our customers.
The 330,000?
Right. So if it was a negative number, that means we'd owe our customers money, and if it's a positive number, that means our customers owe us money. And this is actually one of the things that we think is that we need as a company. We need that number for our balance sheet, and it's not something that's kept track of in the paper spreadsheet that the commission was using up until about a year ago.
I have a lot of questions about everything you just told me that I'm going to save until we get to another part of the opening order. So I will keep this tab open and in mind, and this $330,000 number, we'll come back to that a little bit later. I think we're about done talking about the LNG. I did want to talk a little bit about Rusmar pressure testing being, the cost of that being included in the GCR calculation as a gas cost. Can you tell me how you decided to include that as a gas cost?
In the absence of LNG, we wouldn't have the cost. It came about because we were trying to set that regulator so that as we're putting the LNG in, we're knowing exactly how much we're supposed to be utilizing. So we believe it was tied to the LNG.
But for the use of the LNG,
Right.
you would not have incurred this expense.
Right.
So have there been any other services provided by Rusmar that you've included in GCR in gas cost other than in that situation?
No, sir.
think we can move on to the second allegation from our opening order, which involves determination of the expected gas cost. And since we were just talking about the $330,000 number, we'll kind of start by talking about that and kind of backtrack to language in the tariff. Let's talk about how you determine expected gas cost. And maybe it actually makes more sense to start with the tariff, so we can look at the tariff. And as you pointed out in either your DRs or your response to the opening order or both, you cited to this page of the tariff that defines average expected cost. And specifically citing to expected cost, meaning cost of gas supplies, including associated transportation storage charges, which result from the application of suppliers' rates currently in effect or reasonably expected to be in effect during the calendar quarter on purchased volumes during the 12-month period ending with the reporting period to which the GCR will apply, divided by the corresponding sales volume. So my understanding is, as between determining the EGC by using suppliers' rates currently in effect, or picking an amount reasonably expected to be in effect during the calendar quarter, you're using the reasonably expected to be in effect during the calendar quarter option, correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you using purchased volumes during the 12-month period ending with the reporting period?
I believe so, yes.
And are you dividing by corresponding sales volume?
I believe so. I'm not, well, in the absence of like pointing to a specific calculation, it's hard for me to, but it sounds reasonable.
That's fair, and if I may ask something more detailed in the post-hearing data request so that we know we're all looking at the same thing. Subject to check, I'm going to represent to you that at least on some occasions, a monthly average was used instead of dividing by corresponding sales volume. So I guess my question to you is, are you aware of times where you may have used a monthly average from what period? 12 month average?
For the denominator?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 12 months.
Okay. A 12-month average instead of sales volume during the reporting period.
So I think there may be,
Or maybe there's no difference.
May-
You can explain to me.
there might be two different things here. With regard to the average price, if you could go back to the spreadsheet and go to the actual adjustment tab, and then scroll down to the but not that far, about the middle, right? Well, I've subsequently added, or at least in a later version of this, what our average price was each quarter, and I put that somewhere on this spreadsheet, not on this particular one because it's not there.
Sure.
So I did start looking at that data more closely. With regard to the volumes, the chicken processing facilities, which is our largest user, did go down. Their equipment that could use our gas went down for an extended period of time, and they used quite a bit of, I mean, they are the super majority of our usage. So if they're not going to be using gas, then the last 12 months number would be meaningless, right? Because if we know they're not going to be using gas going forward because their equipment's down, then our gas volume would be dramatically different. And we do see this in other locations as well, like where we serve asphalt plants, that if they're not running, it just really dramatically impacts the flow in that location. If I could expand just a little bit further here, if you give me a little leeway.
Absolutely.
So to a certain extent, on the expected cost of gas, in the absence of a volatile market, we could just set it at a fixed number. You could just always say that it's going to be $5. And to a certain extent, it won't matter, because the purpose of the GCA is always to return you to zero, right? So, the first time I heard that you guys wanted us to use the last 12 months average was in this show cause. And, I've been here, whatever it is, coming up on 15 years, and I had never been told this before. And obviously we've turned in lots and lots of GCAs, so I'm happy to do whatever you want.
You're reading from your tariff though, right?
In my tariff, I'm using the part where it says what it says right here. Reasonably expected. And I can give you an example, a current example right now where it says appropriate adjustments. In the current index right now, the underlying index has gone up about 20% versus last year. So if I'm using the last 12 months average, I'm probably going to under collect about 20% because the underlying index has gone up. And that's where you would use your kind of reasonable expectation. Now, we can really, what this allegation is an allegation of, Mr. Hartline, we think you're unreasonable. And we can, my wife does. That's like, so, that's a fair allegation, I suppose, in certain instances.
In your understanding of this average expected cost definition in the tariff, using the reasonably expected part of that definition, obviously that gives some leeway as to the determination of the rates that are to be used. But do you, in your preparing of GCA filings, the part after that, on purchased volumes during the 12-month period, ending with the reporting period to which the GCR will apply, divided by the corresponding sales volume, do you treat that part of the equation as being something that can be adjusted based on what you described, the chicken farm demand changing.
So
Do you believe you can estimate the corresponding sales volume?
since the filing of the show cause, and since staff coming out with their own spreadsheet, I think it was in 2024, somewhere thereabouts, we have strictly followed what is our last 12 months average cost of gas, and what is our last 12 months usage. It's like, I'll do anything you want me to. You just got to tell me. Because again, the GCA is always going to come back to zero. So if it wasn't unreasonable, especially in hindsight, for your staff to think that I overestimated the cost of gas. That was, at that time, I thought that LNG exports and that we're seeing now were going to drive up the cost of gas. And I made an adjustment, and that adjustment didn't come to pass. And staff looked at it and said, well, you were wrong. Gas prices didn't go up that much. So that wasn't unreasonable on their part to do that. But I think we're missing the fact that it always comes back to zero. If we want to just set it at $5, if we want to set it, as you guys want to set it at the last 12 months average, happy to do that. We'll just do that.
You keep saying it all comes back to zero, and that is how the GCA is supposed to work. However, would you agree that there's a benefit to you and a detriment to ratepayers if a utility consistently over-recovers and basically front-loads the GCA?
You can only do that for a very short term. Because if you're consistently overestimating the cost of gas, then your average adjustments and your subsequent balance adjustments are going to be negative, right? And so it's going to so you could really only overestimate and theoretically front load, as you've discussed, for maybe 4 quarters, maybe 8, somewhere between 4 and 8 quarters, before the mechanism of the GCA is going to force that number down, and you're just not going to be able to maintain that front loading as you've described it.
I agree with that, but isn't there a value of hundreds of thousands of dollars over collection? I mean, it's basically like a interest-free loan for
Let's go
4
back
quarters,
to the
correct?
spreadsheet for
Well,
just
let's hold up for a second. So my initial question was, is there a benefit to the utility to, I'll adjust my question a little bit. Is there a benefit to the utility to overestimate supplier rates for purposes of the GCA?
What I think maybe, well, as I've said, I don't think that you can front load for a long period of time, and you're gonna start creating problems, with cash flow if you do it that way. Now, to be fair to you, and perhaps something that you're trying to allude to, is if I see large balances in the over collection or under collection, I may try to shorten the GCA process to keep that number closer to zero. So, and how do I do that? So if I'm, let's say, overcharged to my customer, if the balance is negative, what I may do is I may underestimate the future cost of gas in order to undercharge the customer and short circuit the GCA process so that that number comes back to zero in a faster time frame than a year. And certainly, that's something that we look at, absolutely. But you cannot front load, and it's very difficult to front load and maintain or continue to overcharge customers. Now, you may try to maintain a wave, like maybe you just always want to be $100,000 over collected or some number. And if you were really good at this, you could probably do that. But if we go to the balance adjustment page, and now scroll to the left, so you can see the balances, how they change. See, at BE, we're over collected to the customer, 37,000. Then it goes to over collected 5,000. Then it starts going the other way. And if we keep scrolling to the left, and you can just see that, it kind of bounces back and forth. And so my objective is to try to keep that close to zero. Now, it's the same objective as the GCA. And as I say, I may use the estimated cost of gas as an additional tool to keep that near zero.
So you're saying, are you telling me that depending on what the GCA balance is, you may purposely overestimate or underestimate rates to get back closer to zero?
When you're estimating, there's a band, right? And I may go to one side of the band or the other to do as you've described.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to that, but I wanna go back to the question that still has not been answered, which is there a benefit to overestimating GCA to the utility? And if I can lead you because I'm cross-examining here, but doesn't over-recovery provide you with interest-free loan for whatever period you're over-collected?
Certainly. If you could maintain, as a prudent businessman, you would always want you would always want to be over-collected from your customer.
But also you described that if you're too over-collected, it's going to bounce back and cause you to take a big hit on the other side that you may not be able to cover at that time. So that is also undesirable.
Correct. Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting what you told me. So either over-collecting or under-collecting could negatively affect the financial condition of the company.
Right.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about, all right, let's talk about how you actually came up with the numbers for your estimated rates. Tell me how you determined that number, since you were not using a 12-month average for the period. Tell me how you determined.
Right, so if you go to the expected cost of gas sheet, and you see the column N, where I talk about the month ahead index, and then there's an adder to it right there. So basically, for the different suppliers, I looked, I didn't do like a statistical analysis or anything that sophisticated. I just had a sense of, okay, they are always about the month ahead index plus $3 or plus 250 and so that's how I was estimating the expected price of gas, is using the month ahead index plus an adder based on the different suppliers.
Can you explain what you mean by that adder and where you came up with that 250?
As I said, I just looked at their pricing over time versus the index, not as a sophisticated analysis, just as I have a pretty, I look at the index every single day, and I just have a sense of, okay, this is where these folks are, and this is where this is over time, not a sophisticated analysis.
Earlier you mentioned, I forget what you said, some reason why you thought rates would be higher. What did you mention earlier?
I anticipated that the LNG market was going to dramatically expand.
Because why?
Because of the war in Ukraine.
Okay. And can you explain is that just a supply and demand issue, global supply changes, so
Europe was
cost goes
getting
up.
their gas from Russia,
Right.
and that gas has been cut off, and so they needed to obtain their energy from somewhere, and my anticipation was that that was going to come from the United States.
That's awfully interesting stuff. How does the United States export natural gas to Europe?
They liquefy it and put it in tankers and ship it.
Sorry to waste the commission's time asking questions like that. It's just interesting stuff. I'm looking at numbers from the period ending October 2023 and actual invoiced rates for February, March, and April of 2024. For Petrol 1, what's the units is that? MCF, CF, what is that?
Pretty sure it's
Okay. Looks like your estimated rate for Petrol 1 was 11.4999. Is that MCF?
They bill in it could be MMBTUs, it could be MCF. I'd have to look at the particular invoice, but it would be very, very close regardless.
The reason I want to make sure about the units is I want to make sure when I'm talking about all these numbers that they're all the same units, so that if something is significantly higher or lower than something else, it's not because we've, used different units. Subject to check, does that sound like
Yes, sir.
the number that you selected for EGC for the period ending October 2023?
Yes, sir.
And so I'll represent to you that the average 12-month for that same period was less than half that, 5.12. So
I don't know that I after this show cause was open, I did do a more statistical analysis of the figures as opposed to my, $3 or $2.50 or whatever. And I think I did provide that to you in a data request.
And when we look back at that after this hearing, I'll include a post-hearing data request if needed, so you can basically double-check these numbers that I'm referencing, because I don't want it to be incorrect, and I want you to have the opportunity to say, oh, you calculated this wrong, if we're looking at 12-month averages. So just be aware that this is all subject to check.
In the interest of, so in that, I'm going to go from memory here for just a moment. As I recall, that in the data request where we did the analysis on the index plus the adder, some of my adders weren't correct. They were off.
You just mean you estimated incorrectly?
Right. So where I said $3 or $2.50, maybe it was $2.71. I don't know what the numbers were, but I'm doing an estimate, right? It's the estimated cost of gas. That's what I'm doing, is an estimate. I didn't spend a ton of time on it. What I want to say is staff is spending and we're all spending a lot of time trying to prove me wrong on an estimate. And there's no need for that. Just tell me, I want you to use the last 12 months average, period. Or I want you to use $5, period. I'm happy to do it. There's no need to, I'm not sure why we need to. If you want something, all you have to do is ask. But maybe ask before a show cause, not afterwards.
Once you got the actual invoice rates for the period ending October 2023, did you change the way that you were determining the EGC?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you change?
We went to what is the average, the last 12 months average.
And was that because of an order in one of our cases, or because because you noticed that the estimates were way too high?
You told us that's what you wanted. We want to comply with staff direction.
And when was that you made that change?
I don't know the exact order. It would have been after 2023. So in one of those cases that was suspended, there were DRs that came out, and there was some discussion about the last 12 months average. I'm not sure which one it was, but it would be within the last 24 months or so.
So at some point you were told to use the last 12 months average, and then you changed your way of estimating.
I am now using the last 12 months average.
And you just said that was in response to something staff told you to do.
Yes, yes,
And so at some point you were told.
yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Steph.
Was your method of estimating during the period ending October 2023, was it consistent with how you've estimated EGC in the past?
The, if we had the benefit of having like, multiple of these GCA spreadsheet filings, I know that the index, this index and adder, I added that at some point. I didn't start using that in 2012. You know, this is something that I've consistently tried to update and improve and add to try to make it better.
Do you have any idea when your spreadsheets would have started including a column, you know, with the index plus whatever?
I think it was before the first one was suspended, but I couldn't be certain. This is a more recent development, though. And recent being a relative term, let's say, in the last 3 or 4 years.
All right, so, I'm sorry, did you say that earlier that you've been preparing the GCR spreadsheet since 2012?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since that time, I mean, you said you look at gas prices every day. Would you have been aware, once the actual invoiced rates came through your office, how much you overestimated or underestimated the EGC? Is that something you look at?
Well, you know it because it's the balance of the actual adjustment.
And since 2012, how often, and I'm not gonna hold you to this, we could figure it out, I guess, if we looked at all your invoices since 2012 and all your EGCs since 2012, but in general, how often have you underestimated your gas costs for EGC purposes? Like I said, I'm not gonna hold you to it.
Right.
A percentage of the time is sort of what I'm looking for.
Right, well, why don't we just go to the actual adjustment page here and just count and see. Scroll down just a little bit. And, okay, so that first one, we've under collected, so keep going. So if it's a positive number, we're under collecting. If it's a negative number, we're over collecting.
I'm sorry, which,
So scroll to the left now. Okay, so, all right, so you see there's negative numbers, that's where I've overestimated, and then there's positive. Look at the yellow.
the
though.
yellow box?
Yeah, so we could,
So negative number is under collection or over collection?
over collection. Negative
Okay.
number is over collection, positive number is under collection, so as we scroll through here,
All right, so this goes back to 2021. I'm sorry, you said negative numbers were over collection or under collection?
Negative numbers are over collection, positive numbers are under collection.
Okay. So for that period, looks like you probably under collected more often than you over collected,
Yes, sir.
but pretty close. Would you say that's consistent with estimates, your estimates since 2012?
I couldn't really say, I mean, to a certain extent, you would want it to be close to even, I suppose. It looks like we're consistently underestimating the cost of gas.
Are you able to tell from this spreadsheet at what point you were told by staff to start using the 12-month average, and then your estimates changed? Like, this looks like it's August of '21 through what I'm looking at right now, May 22nd. If we scroll on over to the right, do we get to that point at some point? Where we can tell a
So
difference in the numbers?
This one doesn't go, this is an earlier one from an earlier quarter. So we have stopped using this spreadsheet because the staff has asked us to stop using it. And so we are using the spreadsheet they developed in 2024. And I can tell you that I'm certain that the last two filings since we've had the spreadsheet, we have used the last 12 months average. We are trying to be in absolute strict compliance at this point. Not that we were not trying to be in strict compliance, but strict compliance as we understand it better today.
One thing that we've had to deal with a lot at the commission since I've been here is the effect that COVID had on any number of issues. What effect, if any, did COVID have on the unpredictability of estimating gas cost, and did it result in you overestimating or underestimating gas costs?
So,
And for what period?
yeah, the knock-on effect of COVID, which you could argue was the inflationary environment, right? From the stimulus spending that occurred, we saw dramatic inflation. So our wage costs have increased 50%. From 2020 through 2024, our wage costs have increased 50%. And our turnover has dramatically increased. And so, you know, we're, to run, you know, our employees, we have 40 employees total, and they are typically very, very long tenured. Most of them have more than 10 years with us. And we have seen of late a dramatic increase in employee turnover, and it's driven by wages.
And is that specific to California, or is that here in Kentucky?
Most of our employees, there's only just a handful in California.
Okay.
The majority of our employees are in Oklahoma. But we've also seen wage increases in Kentucky and Tennessee as well.
Did they raise the minimum rate in Oklahoma? I know they did in California.
It's just I don't think they've done anything with minimum wage, but Oklahoma was actually one of the lowest wage, I think it was the second lowest wage state in the nation.
Yeah.
And its wages have just dramatically increased. And I think a lot of it is, for years and years, Oklahoma was an out-migration state, and it's just been, there's been a lot of growth and actually, a lot of pressure on getting employees,
And keeping them,
Yes.
retention.
yes,
Yeah.
employed,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, fine, thank you. So, looking at the, the quarter ending October 2021, 5 straight quarters of under collecting. And based on what you've just told me, due to the inflationary result of post or during COVID times, you underestimated rates because those inflationary forces hadn't kicked in yet.
I want to make sure I make the right connection here. You asked why. Has COVID affected us? Inflation has affected us through employee changes, including the fact that the person who starts this process has changed 3 times over the last just few years. I'm responsible for the estimated cost of gas. So I don't know that you can draw a direct connection. It certainly made the process more difficult, but I would say that the connection to the estimated cost of gas might be a little tenuous.
So just to, I don't know, give you a broader overview of kind of what sort of information I'm trying to get. We've got spreadsheets where at different points from 2012 to now, you are adding a column of information that informs, I'm not sure if it's meant to inform us how you're getting to the EGC. Until there's a final order in this case, I'm trying to not speak to what you ought to do in a situation like that, but I'm trying to understand, and the commission is trying to understand how you're so this index, I think everybody can understand, here's an index. You're using this index as a starting point. What is a little more tenuous is plus $2.50. Nowhere in the record does it tell us why you included that adder. You telling us it's about Ukraine, that's, to my knowledge, the first that we've heard of any of that. Did you include anything about that in any cover letter or anything else to commission, to your knowledge?
I think we're trying to connect things that I didn't. If I've led you to believe that Ukraine was tied to the $2.50 adder or the $3 adder, I apologize because I've led you down the wrong path. So the index is priced at the Henry Hub. The Henry Hub is in Louisiana. The price of gas, as you move farther away from Louisiana, gets more expensive. So in my estimation, again, not spending a ton of time on analyzing that estimation, I determined that it seems like petrol is consistently about $2.50 above the Henry Hub index in Louisiana. It seems like diversified is consistently $3 above the Henry Hub index. Sparta was 275, whatever the numbers are. I didn't change once I kind of established those estimates of where they were at above the index, I didn't go back and reanalyze that again. I just looked at, well, what is the index changed, and I actually, in the formula, I put the index number in, and it already, in the formula, it adds the 250 or the 275 or the $3.
That sounds very much like using historical information about the supplier. So
yeah.
I guess my question is,
So the
is there some other aspect that
right,
we haven't defined yet?
Yeah, the
Some other factor.
disconnect between, you are absolutely right. That essentially what I was doing is I was looking at their historic pricing versus the index. The disconnect between looking back the last 12 months and what I was doing is, if I looked back the last 12 months, I'd be using the last 12 months index. Whereas when I was making the estimated cost of gas, I was using the current month's index. Does that make sense?
Let me roll that around for a second.
Could you say that again?
So, the current month's index, so for instance, let's say I was we have an upcoming filing at the end of September. So what I was doing is I would look at the month ahead index comes out about the 25th of the month. So on the 25th of September, I would get the month ahead index and put it into the filing that we are going to make. The difference between what I was doing and what the policy is is that instead of using the current month ahead index, you would actually look and use the past month ahead indexes to essentially get to the same to a number.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hartline, I've got it back up there again, the tariff, last sentence of average expected cost says, any adjustments of this type shall be described in the quarterly gas cost recovery report. Is there any reason why your company shouldn't be able to, when it files its GCR report, include in the cover letter, hey, we're including this sort of EGC determinant that includes this index, which here's the index, here's how much the index says, plus an adder.
We could certainly add more notes. I will say that it is going to be my preference going forward that we just use the last 12 months average, because I just don't, I don't want to be here again, right? It's just, whatever takes the least amount and has the least risk that's what I want to do.
At least for that period ending October of '23, that 12-month is more accurate, was more accurate than your estimates by a lot, correct?
I'm sure you've done the analysis, so, and I know that those LNG exports did not materialize at that time, and that number was not, my estimate was incorrect.
I mean, and you, so, assuming the commission grants leave for your attorney to submit a brief in this case, I would invite you to include information to the contrary for previous periods if you were actually more accurate than the actuals. Any evidence you can provide about that, you know, will be considered by staff at least. I think, do you have any more questions about UGC? I think we can move on to part 3, unless the commissioners have any questions about the EGC.
Well, you can go ahead.
If anybody needs a break, now might be a good time to ask.
We would just have interrupted you if we had questions.
All right. Would you enjoy talking about Bud Rife now?
The gift that keeps on giving, yes.
All right. I'm going to avoid just having you recite what's already in the record. Obviously, commissioners, feel free to chime in if you have any questions about how Navitas and Bud Rife's companies became entangled. But my understanding from the discovery materials is that Navitas is or was receiving gas from BNS Oil owned by Bud Rife, despite the fact that at some point BNS cut off your gas supply. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
And is Navitas still receiving gas from BNS?
I believe so, yes.
And do you have any idea what precipitated the gas flow picking back up?
I have speculated, and I believe it's in some of the DRs, that it's a combination well, it's an oil and gas well, and so in order for Mr. Rife to extract his oil, he must extract the gas at the same time. Because the well is located in a neighborhood, he cannot risk venting the gas. So he is essentially just putting the gas into our pipeline.
Okay, I'm going to ask some sort of technical questions about how he's connected to your system and how your system accesses that gas. I guess I'm looking to you and to your attorney to tell me whether we should go into confidential session, if we want to talk about some of the technical aspects of accessing Navitas's gas line.
So for like security purposes,
Oh,
we don't want public to have access to any information that may be dangerous.
Right, I don't think that's necessary. There's a gas house there and everybody can see the valves, so you're not keeping anything secret, I don't think. So we can proceed if you like.
And if either of you feels like a question that we ask requires a response that should be confidential, just speak up. And it's very easy to go into confidential session.
Okay, thank you.
All right, for the purposes of these questions, let's assume that nobody in the room is an expert on gas distribution, well connections and whatnot. Describe for me how BNS Oil, how their wells are connected to your line.
Certainly.
This is connected to a transmission line of Navitas, or
It's directly
Somebody else's
connected to the
okay.
distribution system,
run by you or run by a third party?
run by us, yes.
Okay, all right, continue.
So, this is, the distribution system used to be owned by Bud Rife. He also had wells, which he held in another company, B&S Oil. And there was an existing connection with valving in place when and just by way of background, so that to kind of, when we agreed to buy the Johnson County and Floyd County systems, and in particular, we're talking about the Floyd County system, Mr. Rife, we believe Mr. Rife agreed to sell gas at a calculated price. And we believe that that calculation was in the testimony provided by staff. I'm not sure if the calculation is in the order itself, but we actually went back and reviewed the testimony, and you can, and I believe it's in the video that the staff member describes the calculation as to how he was supposed to sell gas into the system.
This is in the acquisition case?
Yes, sir. And then after the acquisition went through, Mr. Rife immediately began objecting to the price of gas he was being paid. And we're like, well, you agree, you signed off, you signed off that and agreed to this order that this is what you would be paid. Eventually, we couldn't come to an agreement. I believe Mr. Rife thought he was the only possible source of supply, and so he could force the matter. As it turned out, we were able to source gas from Diversified, and so we just ended our relationship. He didn't take it well. But then subsequently, perhaps a year later, we're like, what is going on in Floyd County? It literally appeared that we were making gas, right? We were literally selling more gas than we were purchasing from our suppliers. That's when we delved into, okay, we understand now that he's reopened that tap and is putting his gas into our system so that he can recover his oil. The tricky part came into effect when we're suing Mr. Rife currently, because we had to agree to refund money to the customer that he overcharged them. And essentially that means we loaned that money to Mr. Rife. And he was supposed to pay us back. It's complicated.
Before I forget, do you happen to know where that lawsuit's filed, or a case number?
We can, Dinsmore is handling that
Okay,
case.
thank
We
you.
can get that for you.
Thank
It
you.
is currently filed though.
I believe so, yes. We've had some
Okay.
movement on it
I'm not
recently.
sure we
but
knew that.
Yeah, we'll ask for that in post-hearing.
So the way he was going to pay us back was through a discount on the rent of we rented a building from him that the gas company previously operated out of, and we were supposed to get a discount on that rent. That building, well, I guess I'm testifying. We believe Mr. Rife burned his building down. And I'm pretty, kick me if I'm wrong. I can't be sued because I'm on the stand, right?
Well,
It was in the paper.
it was, I would
allegedly.
caution, yeah, you're being broadcast nationwide.
Right.
Just so you-
So And apparently this isn't the first time that Mr. Rife has allegedly burned his building down. As an aside, I will tell you that my engineer, Bell Engineering out of Lexington, Kelly Gillespie, told me, don't do business in eastern Kentucky. I grew up there. That's good advice I should have taken, but I didn't. In any case, since we can't get our loan back from renting the building, because the building burned to the ground, we're now suing him for the monies that are still owed. The original amount was, I believe, like $109,000 something that was due to be refunded to the customer, and I think we're suing him for 70. But because we're suing him, and he is now providing us something in value, our concern was that we may have an obligation to reduce the amount of the suit by the value of the gas he provides, even though we didn't know he was providing it or didn't agree to him providing it. Because essentially theoretically he's mitigating mitigating that $70,000.
And do you have any idea how much gas he did insert into those lines, or what the value was?
So yes, because we know what the sales are, we know, and we know that we only, let's say for instance, we sold 100, but we only bought 10, well, he must have put in the 90 then, right? So we know what he's put in. And what we did is the calculation that the calculation that was stipulated to was fairly complicated because it involved pricing from Columbia and pricing like some I just said, hey, can we put this at the index price, which would be the cheapest gas that we buy? So I said, can we put this at the index price, include it in the GCA, and then obtain that money back? And again, I felt like the answer to that question was this show cause, right?
How did you ask the question?
So we started including it in the GCA, and I think that I put some notes. I'm not 100% on this, but there's a cover page, and I believe there might be some notes on the cover page, or somehow we tried to communicate it with staff, maybe poorly. But in any case.
And when would that have been, that you started including it in the GCA?
It would have been fairly recent, like, I think we bought it in 21, and it would have probably been 23 timeframe.
But never a direct conversation, it was just in notices back and forth? Or in your sheets?
I'm certain it wasn't a direct conversation,
Okay.
because the last time I spoke to a staff member was when I met with Leah Faulkner in 2022.
We didn't need to use those, but we didn't.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hartline, were you looking
So I
at
was-
something to add to?
I was trying to look up when, it appears that he did start putting the gas in 2022.
You said that you determined how much gas he was putting in the system based on the
The
difference between sales and
purchases, yes, sir.
purchases. Is there not a meter at his connection?
No, sir.
Would there normally be a meter in a connection like that?
Normally, somebody wouldn't just turn your valve on, right? I mean, it's, yeah, normally you would have a meter and you would, there may still, I don't know if there's a meter set there still or not. There's certainly a regulator there.
I guess when you were actually buying gas from him and had some sort of agreement, did you have a written-
It was metered and measured,
Okay,
yes.
so did he remove the meter when he shut off the gas? Is that, or you don't know?
It may be, a lot of times, it's not a meter, it's a chart, and you have to send the chart in to have it read. I'm not certain what setup we have there,
Okay.
or have or had.
Can you
there.
explain the chart system to me?
So the chart system is a big paper chart that, it's in a circle and it spins and a line is traced on it based on the pressure in the system. And you send that chart into a company that reads it and converts it to a volume figure.
And is that just a cheaper method than having a meter installed?
It's I believe it's considered more accurate
Okay.
because it's very difficult. A meter has to be sized for the flow, and because there's a broad range of flow, it's very difficult to size a physical meter for the city gate, because if you have a big meter and the flow is very small, what ends up happening is the flow can't actually operate the meter, and you end up having gas slip by the diaphragm. And if the meter is too small and there's a large amount of flow, then you would actually restrict the flow and not be able to get enough gas into your system.
So based on your narrative earlier, is it, technically speaking, is there nothing more complicated involved in him restoring the flow than him turning a valve?
That's exactly right. Yes.
And is that, I forget what you called it, did you say a gas house?
Yeah, so it's literally like a little building. It almost looks like an outhouse, and that's out. And I believe there's a fence around it.
Okay, so you have to have a key to get in?
Yeah.
Okay. But nobody from Navitas has been in the gas house since the gas went back on?
It's not ours. It's his property.
So nobody from Navitas has ever
Right.
been in his gas house?
Yeah.
Would he let you on his property?
Uh,
If you needed to?
Our employee there, Jimmy, who used to work for him, probably has a decent relationship with him, so.
And just back on the issue of how you determined how much gas you thought you had gotten from Mr. Reif, is there any possibility that any extra gas came from any other sources? I mean, are there other wells where the owner might have had the same issue where, as opposed to venting gas, they could have put more gas on the system?
The only other connection to that system that we're aware of is the diversified gas feeding into it.
And is there a meter regulating that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're able to subtract that from, okay, gotcha. have you disclosed to Mr. Rife or to the court in the lawsuit case that this gas is being put on your system from his wells?
We have had communications with his attorney regarding the matter. I am I'm a foreigner to Eastern Kentucky, and I feel like I have enough problems there, so there was some thought that, well, let's just go shut the valve off again and maybe disconnect it from our system. I guess I wouldn't tell you that, I mean, to a certain extent, there's a little self-preservation going on here that I'd like to visit Eastern Kentucky again and not have to look over my shoulder every single moment. So if I can, tamp down that relationship and figure out a way to not antagonize an individual who's allegedly burned his own building down, so I want to try to be accommodating and calm things down.
In the course of the litigation, has there been, and I'm not asking about anything that you and any of your attorneys have discussed, but as between you and Mr. Rife, have you discussed how to deal? I don't know why I'm not just saying, is there some sort of agreement between you and Bud Rife about how the gas that's going into your system right now should be handled, either price-wise or any other way?
I think what we could provide, from my recollection, I want to say that Kyle Burnell at Dinsmore provided a letter to Bud Rife's attorney describing the situation, that, hey, we are aware that you're putting gas in the system, and I'm not sure if he talked about the idea of we might approach the commission to see if there can be some way to help you mitigate your $70,000 to us. I'd have to see, but we could provide that letter, I would think.
Yes, sort of the bottom line that I'm trying to get to is, in mitigation, like you explained, you're crediting what Bud Rife owes you, and I want to know how you determine that amount and whether Mr. Rife and his lawyers responded to that amount, if they have, or that method of determining an amount.
Right, they have
Does
not
that make sense?
responded.
I'm sorry, I feel like I didn't ask that
No,
question very
I
well.
understand. They have not responded to the letter. I don't believe they've responded to the letter that Kyle had sent, other than maybe to just acknowledge that they had received it. I don't think we made any concrete proposals in the letter, other than to say that, maybe we can help reduce that 70,000. But the calculation method that, and I'm not sure it appears on this one, but it was just simply, here's the delta between what we sold and what we bought, so it has to be this volume, and here was the index that month. And that's how we were looking to determine the number.
Any questions about So before I came to the PSC, I was a litigator, so I'm used to thinking about sort of the worst case scenarios for any sort of litigation. But ultimately, your litigation case will either end with a settlement or a finding either somewhere in between or against Mr. Reif or against you. Let's say the court were to decide that your method of determining the mitigation is correct. If the commission were to decide that you calculated the amount correctly and that constituted a recoverable gas cost amount, then there wouldn't be any problem. But if you were to settle for some lesser amount than you're asking for, how would that affect how you would, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think any amount should be credited back to ratepayers under the GCR if your recovery in that case is something other than the full amount? Or if the amount you've credited to him, Mr. Reif, is altered by the court or by a settlement?
Sure, I see what you're saying.
That was a really long and horribly asked question, but I see the spark of understanding in
Right.
your eyes, so.
So, as I mentioned, I think we're owed, we believe we're owed 70,000. Theoretically, once we recovered our 70,000, presumably Bud Reif would want to continue to sell his gas into the system, and then the money would go to him. Because he still needs to dispose of the gas, right? He still needs to get rid of it. It may be that we could argue that, well, we're providing him a service to get rid of his gas, and just tell him that he's welcome to put it in, but we're not going to pay him for it. I suppose that could happen in order for him to continue to flow the well for the oil. So maybe he gets nothing. I think that you're and then the ratepayer would just get free gas, and that's okay. That's fine if. And I see what you're saying, that in the normal course of business, while we're owed 70,000, we might be willing to take less. So what you're asking perhaps is, once you recover some number, can we go back to the ratepayer just having the benefit of receiving the free gas? That's fine with me. I mean, I think that's not an unreasonable position.
So just as sort of a procedural matter, I think we'll probably ask for a post-hearing data request, just asking that Navitas, during the pendency of this case, update the record with settlement information or any information about an agreement that Navitas and Mr. Reif come to as far as contractual type agreement regarding transfer of this new gas, if that makes sense. All right, unless anyone needs a break, I will move on to the next section of our opening order.
We do have a request for a break.
Great.
And just so I get an idea about how much more questioning do you think staff has? I'm thinking about whether we're doing a lunch break today or
Hour and a half.
So, do you have a preference for whether we power through or take a lunch break?
Well, Mr. Hartline has a
Power
flight
through?
later this afternoon.
Okay.
Um,
I think we'll try to power through.
we're prepared
So
to
we
go.
could make this a break long enough for people to grab a snack? Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, is that? Yeah, okay. So let's take a 15-minute break, and folks can feel free to snack or something like that, and then we'll plan to power through lunch. Okay? All right. If anybody has a blood sugar reason or Well, at least they were in the other courtroom.
Yeah.
Are they red in here still, correct? Okay. We are back on the record in case number 2025-00010. Mr. Hartline, you're still under oath. Counsel?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hartline, during the break, your attorney and I talked about the allegations. I'm referring to it as allegation number 4 in the opening order that involves errors that were made in spreadsheets. And although the opening order does list all the cases where errors have been noted and corrected, as opposed to me asking you about them today and you possibly not remembering things you put in a spreadsheet 4 years ago, that it might make more sense for us to reference them in a post-hearing data request and allow you to answer the why was this error made instead of us doing it right now. I would like to ask, though, regarding, things like rounding errors, transposition error, data entry errors, for example. Is there anything that you can do or have been doing to try to limit the number of those kinds of errors? Somebody double checking, things like that?
So this particular issue has come up in other matters where I noticed that, like, I'll look back at something I was doing and I'll notice errors in it. And it bothered me, like, what is going on? And then I finally realized, because I'm, back when I was in heavy civil construction operating equipment, we called it a working foreman. And because I'm doing work, but at the same time I'm getting phone calls or people are coming in my office, I came to realize that what's happening is, as I'm doing things, people are interrupting me and I'll think I'm done, or I won't finish the thing. And so I think the first step, admittedly, it's taken a long time for me to realize that that's what's happening. So the first step is recognizing where the errors seem to be coming from, because most of them are mine. And why am I committing them? Well, this seems to be a reason. So now that I have a better sense of, okay, this is what's going on, that's probably step one in doing a better job.
Okay, thank you. I am happy to move on to the next couple sections, which involve, in one case, an order requiring annual reconciliations of surcharge collections, and another case, order requiring tracker updates for acquisition surcharge. In your response to the opening order, my understanding is you've admitted that you fail to supply those on an annual basis, except for the first year of the surcharge reconciliation. Does that sound correct?
So with regard to number 5, which is case 2019-430, which is the B&W, we call it the retroactive FERC tariff. That was a complete, we dropped the ball. We had different counsel at the time, and once that counsel left, he ended up going to the University of Wyoming Law School. We never looked back at the order to see, we have an annual filing due. And so, yeah, we did not make that annual filing on 19-430. That being said, to a certain extent, 19-430, that is, which I think everybody in this room would agree was maybe an unjust case, because it seemed to be a retroactive tariff that went against the ratepayer, but nonetheless, FERC allowed it. That was supposed to be collected over a 10-year period. That will not be collected over a 10-year period. It will be probably more like somewhere between 17 and 20 years for them to get that money, which I'm perfectly happy to make them wait that long. But we can continue to update you annually. I think in one of the DR responses, we suggested that we just do all of them together on March 15th annually. And if that's acceptable, we'd be happy to continue to do that. With regard to number 6, the updates that were associated with the GCR residuals from the acquisition, those were being provided every quarter because there was a spreadsheet in the GCR filing that updated the balances.
Can you, I'm gonna try to pop, Jim, thank you. Can you tell me where
So
I
it's
can find that?
You see it's on the right, it says past GCR. There you go. There it is. So that's it. And you can see that Floyd County and Johnson County, those are turned off. And you may ask, like, why does the balances still slightly increase? Let's say, look down at Johnson County, even though the balance is turned off, or even though the charge is turned off, you can see that, well, wait a minute, the balance is increasing. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What that is when a customer who had they went off the system owing a balance. So they had already been charged, but they didn't pay. And then when they come on and pay, that's why you're seeing that balance slightly increase. And then if we roll up to the top, which is Clinton County, I need to double check this. I think we just turned that one off as well. So I think they're all three fully recovered now. They have residual balances. Then the other two are the refunds associated with the what we were talking about with regard to Bud Rife. One of those refunds has been completed, and you noted that in your filing that it had been turned off, incompleted, and it had been turned off. And then the other one, which I think is Johnson County, is still ongoing and is on track to refund based on the original order. And then once that one is completed, our thought is that we take all these residual balances and bundle them up and then just add them to the GCA as a line item and clear them out that way. And we also we did file on the Floyd County and Johnson County refund. We filed this last March 15th, and then we also had filed in a DR associated with 2020, one of the suspended 2023 GCAs.
Going forward, any annual filing requirements required by past orders, are you going to be in charge of filing what's necessary, or is there somebody else at Navitas that's going to be doing that?
With the assistance of Mr. Buckley, we'll be making those filings, and ultimately, everything is my fault. So.
All right, we're finally to the last allegation in the opening order, which involves time of filing GCR filings, and my understanding from your response to that order was that you didn't understand that your tariff required you to file more than 30 days before the end of the GCR period. Is that correct?
Yes, if I may, let me just jump back so that we have it on the record so that the commissioners know. With regard to 19-430, the balance started out as $229,000 in September of 2019 and was to be collected over a 10-year period. However, the balance as of June 2025 is still $156,605. So I just wanted to get that on the record and make sure they were aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
With regard to the question you just asked, yes, I absolutely misunderstood. I understood the time frame to be I had to file 30 days before it went into effect. We bill on the 7th, and so I was always in my mind, oh, as long as I file by the 6th, I'm good. So in any month, I was probably in any quarter, I was probably somewhere between 1 and 6 days. Well, sometimes I wasn't late. So I was between 0 and 6 days late, probably on a reasonably regular basis, just because I didn't understand that it was due on the month end, not 30 days before it went into effect.
And all those like 17 times or whatever the number was, no one ever communicated to you that you were filing them late?
No, ma'am. When I met with Leah Faulkner in March of 2022, that did not come up.
that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Wood,
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Reagan.
Prior to being at Navitas, you worked in Kenya and in Chile on their pipeline?
Yes, ma'am.
How does that different from what's going on here?
So those were big multinational corporations with lots and lots of staff, and we're a extremely small outfit. I mean, we serve 5,000 customers. All of our customers are rural. The biggest town we serve is Albany, Kentucky, by population. The biggest town by meter count is Jellicoe, Tennessee. And so we predominantly serve farmers and farm-related operations, and then lots of oil field operations and oil-related operations. But all of our business is rural communities.
So you don't have a staff of people doing that, you're doing, it's a small company, you're doing the financing and all of that, filling out the GC forms? Okay.
Yes. So when people ask me what I do, I always lead with, well, I take out the trash, because nobody else will do it. And so I remember my business partner talks about all of us are crescent wrenches, the adjustable crescent wrench. Whereas at bigger companies, they have a 12 millimeter and a 13 millimeter and a 14 millimeter, they have the exact wrench for that exact job, but we don't have the staff for that. So a good example of this is how we operate in the field. So if you thought of a big utility, they're going to have somebody who reads the meters. They're going to have somebody else who goes out and does leak checks. They're going to have somebody else who does new meter installations. They have a different person in a different group for every single position if you're a major utility. Whereas the way we operate, because our customer density is so low, the individual in charge of those customers is soup to nuts for those customers. He does everything. He reads the meters, he sets the new meters, he does the leak checks, he has to do everything, and then he will help with the construction if we're doing any new construction. And then just recently, we brought a small crew out from Oklahoma to Kentucky to do some repairs on our systems and updates on our systems here in Kentucky to supplement the people that we have here.
Okay, thank you.
So it does sound like there have been some communication issues.
Yes, ma'am.
And to the extent that those were ours, I intend to work on them. But there are lots of people who are able to make these filings without issue. So it can't be all us. We'll have to determine what's actually a violation and what was actually a willful violation. And there's a big difference in what we do. I wanted to also say that it's not too late to have an informal conference if there's an outstanding request for that. And that if that's necessary, I wouldn't be opposed at all to granting that if it would still be useful. Are there any outstanding issues that haven't been brought up today that you would still need clarification on in order to be able to make these filings? Anything that we have left confusing for you or not given you clear direction on that you could tell us now so that we avoid things like this?
I guess the only thing I would say is if there are other kind of when, there was always this adamance that we fill out the paper form, even though we were providing the spreadsheet.
Currently, we're requiring paper?
There's a request for a PDF, so essentially you're still providing the PDF, even of the new Excel spreadsheet that you developed recently. I didn't understand, like, it didn't make sense to me until I realized somehow through the filing that there's a book that they keep, right? And they put that piece of paper in that book, right? It just didn't make any sense to me. And now I'm seeing staff saying, no, there's not. So I read something into the filing that maybe doesn't even exist, but so if there are other rules, like, for example, the rule of using the last 12 months average, which is not necessarily in our tariff and I don't think is codified in legislation, I'm not sure, maybe it is, but if there are other rules like this, unwritten rules that exist, you know, just to make us aware of those. If you see us doing something wrong, it's probably because we don't know to do it right.
Do you ever use your cover letter when you file these things to communicate things to the commission?
I like, for instance, I have an outstanding question right now. One of the tricky parts about our GCA that probably no other utility in the state faces is we bring gas in from out of state. And along the way, some of the gas is dropped off in Tennessee. So we were always having to do this allocation between Tennessee and Kentucky. And then I realized just recently, because of the way you have the line loss limitation, I said I don't even need to do the allocation. I can just let the line loss limitation allocate for me. So I can just include the entirety of the invoice and the line loss limitation will apportion it properly. And I put this in the cover letter, and I think I've put it on some of the pages that I've filed, and I haven't received an answer back as to if that will be acceptable. So that's an outstanding question that we have. Can I just allow the line loss limitation to allocate between Tennessee and Kentucky? And that's tended to be how I've tried to communicate, is just writing little notes in the spreadsheets to hopefully they get viewed.
And when you write a note like that, have you ever had a response?
No.
I imagine there would be better ways
Yeah.
to try and communicate with staff, including cover letter. And if their requests for informal conferences have not been responded to, that's not going to happen anymore. You're going to get a response. And I guess
I have one more question, and I don't know if you can answer this or if this is confidential, so you let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a contract in writing with Mr. Reif?
Yes,
Yes,
it was
okay.
included with the filing.
Okay,
mhm.
yep.
That's it. Sorry. And then I guess just as an Eastern Kentuckian,
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry that someone warned you off doing business in the entire region. I imagine we have our knuckleheads, but some of us maybe aren't quite like that. And I just say that to say that I acknowledge you've had some issues. And it does sound like there've been some fairly serious issues, but hopefully it's not the entire region that's the issue. Redirect.
Madam Chair. And I won't go on for too long, but just to clarify a few things. First, you had just mentioned you had 5,000 customers. Is that nationwide? Is that amongst all your jurisdictions?
Yes, sir, that we're, I believe about 750 customers here in Kentucky.
Going back to the expected gas costs, I think there was some question as to when you were, it was made abundantly clear that you should look at the past 12-month figures in calculating that expected gas cost. Would it surprise you to learn that in the commission's order entered October of 2024, that contains instruction as to, that the commission find, I'll just read it for the purpose of the record. The commission finds that Navitas Kentucky should base the commodity rate for its suppliers on the immediate 12-month actuals, which is the reporting period used in routine GCR rate reports. The method is more concurrent with the other LDCs of similar size. Does that sound right to you, that post receiving this order, that's when you started looking at the 12-month path for expected gas costs? Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir, that sounds right.
And so, since that time, you've had 3 purchase gas adjustment filings?
So there would have been June 30th, March 31st, because I know we haven't been late on those ones, and December 30th, so there would be 3, yes.
And on each of those, you have utilized this expected gas cost approach towards
Yes,
the
that's correct.
methodology.
Yes,
And since that order came out, you filed on or before the first of every month?
Yes,
Of
sir.
every quarter?
yes,
Since that order came out, you have used the spreadsheet specifically provided by commission staff that we requested to, as your rate, your GCR rate report, is that correct?
yes,
Those 3 cases remain pending at this time, is that correct?
yes.
Speaking a little bit about the errors that were in the, that were mentioned, you know, as one of the allegations, as well as the annual update, particularly with respect to 2019 430. Were any of those errors or failure to file intentional or willful in nature?
No, sir.
Would you consider them more perhaps an oversight or incidental to the work that you do, perhaps regrettable but not intentional in any way?
That's correct, yes.
Would you say anything you've been alleged to have done as part of this case was a result of an intentional effort to be contrary to an order or rule of the commission?
Yes, I believe that it is not my intent to, the regulated utility business, especially for those of us who've been in it a long time, is an exceedingly simple business. And it's just easy to do it the way that it's supposed to be done, as long as everybody kind of knows what's the expectations are. And now, with regard to, I think they're called Scrivener's errors, right? When I write something down wrong, which I do a lot. I think I've talked about that, and I will try to get better at not making mistakes.
Earlier, before we took a break, there was an initial question about a forthcoming rate case. Do you intend to file a rate case this year?
So we are working on a rate case. Our goal was to try to file it in September. We engaged Prime Group to do a cost of service study, because that was one of the key issues in the denial, that we had not had a cost of service study done. Last week, Prime Group while they had accepted the assignment and had at least informally agreed to our time frame, last week they let us know that one of the principals has some sort of serious medical issue, and as a result of that, They're saying that they cannot probably get to it until November. But, you know, we can't wait that long. So I don't know if we need to file with the cost of service study to come later when they're able to do it. They recommended maybe going to a national firm, but I will say that the cost of service study, as they've described it to us, will approach $50,000. When you divide $50,000 by 750 customers, it starts to be a lot of money. And, you know, if we all of a sudden go to a national firm, I'm sure that number goes up. So, you know, we're, as I mentioned, we're in a tight spot. We have got to have some relief. And so we'll, if we can file and with the allowance that the cost of service study will come a few months later, that would be helpful.
Do you intend to request emergency implementation of rates that you propose in your forthcoming rate case?
Yes, sir.
And you also mentioned earlier that there's the outstanding gas cost that is presently unrecovered that has kind of accumulated due to those previous cases being suspended. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those those gas costs are to be addressed in the PGA case that's currently pending that was filed on December 30th. Does that sound right to you?
I don't know that they have made a plan on how to address those. I know that the first of the suspended costs would be coming up for its actual adjustment review and become the balance adjustment. And so, you know, we have to deal with it. You know, when we find ourselves in a situation similar to what happened with the acquisition, where we probably need to come in and sit down like we did with Leah and, you know, kind of lay everything out and then come up with a plan for how are we going to deal with this, and how are we going to deal with it quickly.
I guess if you could turn to Navitas' response to the Commission's order initiating this case,
Okay.
and specifically page 6, I guess I just want to ask you whether this paragraph at the top of page 6, which I'll ask you to read, remains accurate and true and fairly summarizes your kind of outlook and position. So if you could please read, do you have that in front of you? I can provide it to you.
Maybe you should provide it to me.
Yes, you should.
Thank you. This is in the record. It's our response to the Commission's order initiating this case.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. It states, in addition to the above responses to the allegations contained in the Commissioner's order, Navitas, Kentucky further desires to underscore that its focus has been and remains the provision of safe, reliable, cost-effective service to its customers. Navitas, Kentucky is not a large corporation. It has always endeavored to ensure its small, largely rural customer base has the option of natural gas service, particularly because large companies refuse to or are otherwise uninterested in making the effort. Navitas, Kentucky acknowledges its imperfections and is working to improve its processes and submissions to align with the commission's wishes. Navitas, Kentucky, again, welcomes the opportunity to sit down with the commission staff and discuss any and all issues, and believes that reasonable discussion will benefit all parties and hopefully bring to conclusion the reoccurring intense castigation to which it has been subject.
And there's a footnote in that paragraph as well, is that correct?
Yes, sir. So, at footnote 3, Navitas, Kentucky, motions for informal conferences filed in case numbers 23428, 24079, 24308, 24184, 24401, none of which have been granted.
And so those were all motions for informal conference that you have filed in recent years to seek guidance and direction from staff, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And we've not been able to have those informal conferences today.
That's correct.
But we would continue to be, would continue to be interested in sitting down with staff and hopefully figuring out any remaining issues that relate to your purchase gas adjustment or otherwise.
Very much so.
Okay. Madam Chair, I believe that's all I have today.
Got it. Lee Cross?
None.
Commissioner?
Nope.
Commissioner? Okay, nothing further from me either. I don't think there's any exhibits we need to move to admit.
None for me.
Everything was already in the record.
Yes.
Okay, so I assume there'll be some further requests for information, maybe an informal conference as well. Written summary of request by August 15th. Quick response or?
Mr. Buckley and I discussed during one of the breaks about having an IC, so we might want to restructure the recommendations from the script.
Do we want to wait on setting that deadline, or do we just want to extend it? We're not necessarily on a deadline here, but I would normally set a briefing schedule and a written summary schedule.
I would say
for
written
requests.
summary we keep in place as indicated, and then
Would you want to get those requests in before you have an IC? Or-
preferably, yeah.
Or wait and see if you need them after an IC?
No, I would rather have the post-hearing data request responses before
Okay.
setting an
Is-
IC.
Is the 15th not a good date, though? Should we,
Oh, no, that's fine.
okay, so written requests out by the 15th, and then assuming he can get them out by the 15th, 14 days later is August 29th. You think? Okay, and if for any reason you can't get them all answered, answer what you can, and let us know when we might expect the rest. And then, by all means, if an informal conference is useful, let's do it. And then, as far as briefing, how about we don't set a briefing schedule for now? We see if we're gonna have an IC. If we don't have an IC, we'll set a briefing schedule.
That sounds great.
Okay. And we never did go into confidential sessions, so I don't need to deal with anything like that. Anything further?
No, Chair.
No? All right. And you may also be excused from the stand. I should have done that a minute ago.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. And then, if nothing further, we are adjourned.